Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Huff Photo Presents, the podcast. My name is Brian Huff, and today I am joined by Ryan Matthews, the author of the hit sci-fi series Release Day. Is it?
The Release Day Saga.
So it's Release Day Saga. I've finished the first book, which I have to say is a feat for me because I'm not a book finisher. So that actually should show it's very well written because, and I would have to say well acted because I listened to it on Audible.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for having me as well.
Yeah, I'm great to have you here. We've met at the Comic-Cons over and over, and I got hooked into the first book and read it, and I like how you're able to write in a way that while I am listening or reading it, I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Your descriptions are very visual and audible, even the sounds of things that happen with the creature. So I guess without any spoilers, kind of give everybody a rundown of this saga.
Well, basically, the saga is a story about these giant alien insects. They swarm planet Earth, and they immediately wipe out most of humanity. What's left of humanity burrows underground, and they build these huge underground cities. And in the book, I call them pods. And several hundred years pass. And over that period of time, the government's growing increasingly corrupt. Everybody, like the general population, has become more apathetic to the cause. They just kind of don't care anymore. This is our lot in life. And the material, like the resources, start to dwindle. And eventually some teenagers are like, this group of teens is like, why are we putting up with this? We want our planet back. And so the series documents their journey to reach the surface, and then travel around the planet to the enemy's hive and destroy them. But obviously that's a feat because the entire surface of the world is dominated by these carnivorous insects.
Right. And what fascinated me is it seemed like once we had a handle or understood one particular insect, like in Release Day, there's one point where they're released near water. The humans are close to water, and they're like, we should be cool here. Nothing's going to bother us because there's nothing they know about. They've been underground, so we don't fully understand what's taken over the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And they quickly learn, in this one instance, there's things there that are just waiting to eat them.
Everywhere.
I mean, yeah, they eventually find out like nowhere is safe, and you're literally every sentence puts you on edge. There's no relief in sight. It's like they have no moment and every time there's a moment to catch your breath, it's so what's the word I'm looking for?
Short-lived.
Yeah, very short-lived. And it just really, the tension is palpable throughout the book. Mm-hmm. Once the characters realize what they've learned through all their training and through what they've learned being in the pods, and that our information that we had to even teach with was so limited. And then they're thrust into this world of just absolute chaos.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so excited for. So I think you got Kickstarters running, right?
Mm-hmm. There's a Kickstarter.
Okay,
it's
for the other Audible recordings.
Correct.
I'll put links to that in the show notes, so people can click on that.
It ends June 18th, so just a matter of days.
Oh,
actually.
Yikes! Okay, act fast. We're recording on Thursday. This recording will go live 8:00 Friday morning, which is tomorrow. And for our Patreon, they will get it live tonight.
Okay.
Our Patreon guys get it earlier. So, all right. So that's coming up pretty quick. I really enjoyed listening to the voice actor that you had voice the book was able to really, for me, bring the characters to life. One thing that was interesting to me, though, was titling your chapters. So the chapters, if I'm correct, are basically the name of the character's point of view that we're going into.
Correct.
And so we're seeing the world through during that chapter. We're in there. I've never seen that before. And maybe I've not read enough books, but
yeah, I've seen it in a few books.
Okay.
I've even seen it done from like third person perspective. But
Okay.
My book is obviously first person perspective.
right.
But yeah, I really enjoyed that. And I did notice that some people, because of that, every time you're reading somebody say sometimes I did have some readers said they would have to go back and look and be like, all right, who's talking again?
Well, since I was listening and it's like chapter blah, 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 and then the name.
Mhm.
And I'm like, wait, I've already listened to this chapter. And I was like, did my timing mess up? And I look at it and I'm like, no, I'm in the right spot. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. We're jumping person to person.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I understood what was going on, then it was really cool because I was like, oh, okay, now I'm going to sort of relive these moments, but I'm going to know what this other person was thinking because while I was this other person, I didn't know what this other person was thinking because you've got these layers
Mhm.
of relationship that are forming and being destroyed and all this. And so getting to understand almost like a movie, really, it feels very cinematic to me being a movie nerd.
Yeah, you're actually not the first person who said that, who's
Okay.
actually used that word. It feels like a cinematic
Yeah.
novel,
Yeah.
which I appreciate. I'm a
Yeah.
big movie nerd as well.
Well,
so.
I mean, it translates really well. Like, I mean, to me, I feel like I'm like, this could be a screenplay. This could be adapted so easy.
Well, I'm ready. Netflix.
Netflix.
Yeah, reach out to me.
Not a sponsor. But so when did you start writing?
COVID.
Okay.
Like I'd always wanted to write a book, and every time I would start to write something, I'd start writing, and then it would become too familiar. It would be like, oh, I've seen this before, I've done this before,
Yeah.
And actually, it was the release date was inspired by a dream, and I took it very far from the original dream. So the original dream was kind of crazy different, but it just kind of kick-started that whole momentum. And then when like I'm a teacher, so when we were kind of furloughed for COVID, that was in March 2020. I basically had the rest of that school year and all of summer, and I mean I had little else to do, so I actually bought a bow and arrow set, and so I'd go play, like kind of do archery in the backyard for part of the day, and then I'd write the other part of the day. And so the first book actually came out of that period, and then it was published in 22.
I mean, it's very interesting now that you say this because the juxtaposition of the insects taking over our planet and what we were living through at the time that a virus had pretty much taken over our planet.
Mhm.
And we were in pods and we were at home and we were locked away. There's a lot of that's very interesting because I'd probably it maybe even subconsciously influenced your
Possibly.
yeah. So that's really interesting because I didn't think about it from that perspective, but it does feel like our planet was taken over by an alien for a period of time where
Mhm.
we were all locked away. Wow.
Except a lot
Okay.
less people died.
Yeah. Thankfully, yeah. Release day. When you hear about what all happens, and as you start to learn like the history of everything, I mean, it's so catastrophic to the human race as a global population.
Mhm.
And I found it interesting too that it seemed like when they first landed, we're like, cool, bugs, we like bugs. we can deal with this. And then no, like it quickly turned into you have no idea
Yeah.
what you're up against.
It was important to me to make the enemy, what's the word I'm looking for? Like you are able to kill it.
Sure.
So like even a group of teenagers, which I mean this is the premise of the whole book, a group of teenagers armed with non-projectile weapons can take out these insects.
Right.
However, the problem is the numbers. They just, it's kind of like a hydra. For every one you kill, there's 5 more that just kind of appear.
Right.
They can reproduce at a rate far faster than anything we
and
can
plus
imagine.
when you start to learn that they communicate, they're not chaotic.
Mhm.
they are organized. And so you start to understand that these things have such, what we underestimated them for was the inability to plan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that was our thoughts as humans. Like, we're like, oh, they're bugs. What are they going to do?
Exactly.
We make bug killer. It's not a big deal. And then, but the sheer volume of the speed of them being able to reproduce, organize, and communicate was absolutely overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And so that the fear level and them running into, I can't remember the name of the one they ran into that was so massive.
Called it the Spineback or
that's
Nightmare.
It, the Spineback, yes.
Every bug has like a common name as well as a nickname.
Right.
And I tried to make that clear because, they aren't using like the common name all the time. That's kind of a mouthful. When you've got a group running at you, you just use the shorter nicknames.
Yeah. Spineback, didn't they all nicknamed it something else, right? Because that was another one we didn't even know existed.
Right.
In the pods.
Yeah. The Nightmare.
The Nightmare. Yeah. Because that's just like, it's covered in not only whatever it's killed, but whatever it's killed that is even if its own kind. Mm-hmm. It does not care.
Yeah. I've had several people ask, how did I get the ideas for this? And every aspect of the insect behavior is based on something insects, like our native insects, do already. Mm-hmm. And I mean, all I did was really make the insects bigger.
It feels like it's like, imagine the one thing you're most afraid of that a spider does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, multiply that times 1,000.
Yeah.
And that's what this thing does. Yeah, so that's like really plays on your worst fears
mm-hmm.
of whatever. And I think that's probably, to me, what added to, because I'm not necessarily freaked out by insects, but the thought of them being able to be monstrously large
mm-hmm.
and fast and thinking. I mean, I think that of all things that bothered me the most was the fact that they could rationalize.
And you learn a little bit more about that as the series goes on. I kind of dive deeper and deeper into that. But one thing that I do want to make clear is that you can't reason with these insects. They're not like, we always envision aliens coming to the planet and us being like, please don't kill us, or, let's be peaceful or whatnot. But these, you cannot talk to these.
Yeah, no, it's even though it seems they talk to each other, they are completely non-empathetic for anything that even themselves, like the Spineback or the Nightmare. Like I said, if there's a swarm of something else in its way, they just get crushed.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to plow through whatever is in front of it. There's no empathy or what I would imagine would be, when we talk about wild animals,
mm-hmm.
It's just that. When you actually sit down to write, do you have like a process you go through, or is it like a?
So that's kind of fun too. In writing, there are these common terms. A lot of people outside writing might not be familiar with it, but there are different names for it. But the ones I hear most often are a planner and a pantser. And a planner is just what it sounds like. Somebody who, they write down everything. You might think somebody really type A. They have an outline that's very detailed. Right. And then a pantser is somebody who's flying by the seat of their pants. I'm more of the pantser. When I write, what I'll usually do is I'll have when I say an outline, I mean a very brief outline, just kind of a loose sketch of whatever I want the book to go. I'll write that down, and then I'll promptly start ignoring it. Like, that's just kind of to get my train of thought going. And then as I write, it's almost like I watch the story unfold in my head.
Yeah.
And it's, you compared it to a movie earlier. It's like I'm watching a movie and I'm just writing down what happens. And that technique has actually served me really well. And I did it through all 4 books. And I feel like the quality was just consistent among all 4 books. It was really important to me that as I came out with the sequels, that they didn't drop in quality. And I think I did that successfully.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's interesting to me. There's so many things that I can relate to in that, as far as like the pantser thing. I plan to a point in photography, but after that, I kind of need to be able to let go.
Yeah.
I feel like because kind of like what we talked about with the podcast before we started recording, kind of take the guardrails off, just so I can see where I might go. I mean, I will plan a backdrop. I'll plan lighting. Like I've got a thing coming up this next week, and of course I've planned and practiced and everything, but at the same time, not knowing in advance the people I'll be working with. The same thing with the cosplay photography, going to the cons. I need to be ready to photograph whatever situation comes up, and I need to be able to be flexible. And so I think that's a really good point that you've got there with the writing, is leaving yourself leeway to be flexible and open to other ideas that come in. And that's really cool. You mentioned like visually watching the story in your head. It's like you're just transcribing this that's playing out.
Yeah. And I think I've noticed the more outline so originally I started trying to have a more detailed outline, but I noticed it limited my creativity. Sure. I was trying to fit my story to my outline. But if you write by the seat of your pants, you're able to just kind of take the creative, I guess, narrative and just run with it. I would have an idea of where I wanted a character to go. And then while I'd be writing, the character would very clearly be like, no, I'm going to go this way. And I can either force it to be the character I want it to be, which doesn't feel natural when you're writing, or I can let that character do what it feels like he's going to do. And so the story takes this whole other trajectory that I wasn't planning on, but it's actually far better than what I had originally planned.
Right.
And it's a fascinating process. I love just seeing how my own brain works.
Yeah. I think that's something that to people being self-aware and learning to let themselves do that and learn, like you said, how your brain works. I think that's critical in any kind of art form that you do, and being able to pull those guardrails off and follow a story. It's like a tree with branches. I'm sure trees don't control, maybe they don't control where their branches and roots go. But being able to let yourself go down those pathways and follow this idea. And like you said, it started with a dream, and going back to that kind of visualization, I will have so many times where I will photograph a scenario in my head over and over and over. But when I get to set or get to wherever that photo shoot is at, having done that in my head gives me a bit of confidence. I've gone through all the steps. I know how to do this, but I try not to let that dictate what that particular shoot's going to actually be about, because I'm scared, like you said, I don't want to limit my creativity. Because if I come in and be like, okay, we're shooting this today, this is what this person's going to look like, this is what this set's going to be, this is what the wardrobe is, and I've got complete and total control of it, my client might have a way better idea, or whoever's helping them or whatever. Being open to that other stream of thought, I think is so critical to, like you said. It's interesting to me that your characters are introducing things to you that are better than you thought of, but you thought of them because it's still in your head.
Right.
They feel real, though.
Yeah.
They feel real.
I think part of it is, as I, kind of build on these characters, they take on their personalities. Yeah. And so like I said, what I had planned for them, what Ryan had planned for them, the characters are actually, I built them to a degree that they're like, no, this is what I would do, not what Ryan would do. I know that sounds kind of contradictory, but it's as if, these people are kind of taking up rent in my head.
I think if you've played Dungeons and Dragons, you understand that completely, especially if you've ever been a DM. And I know my youngest son can attest to this. You can lay out all the plot and story that you want, but when those characters, of course, in this case, they're actually other people. But like you said, you can plot and lay out all this stuff. But chances are one of those characters are going to go, nah, I'm going to go do this. And being able to allow that freedom of thought in your own head, I think, is extremely impressive. I think that shows how creative you are to be able to actually imagine these characters to a point that they're sentient in your own mind. That's really cool.
Thank you.
I'm excited to read the rest of them.
Yeah, I'm excited for you too.
I'm hanging there, man. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, well, at the very soonest, the next audiobook, I mean, you're looking at least 6 months.
Sure.
So I think you might have to cave and read.
I might have to cave in and read some. My problem is I'm in the car like more than I'm anywhere else, and I think that's why I'm such a huge audiobook person. But I also learned when I was younger that I'm a very audible listener, which is funny because I'm a photographer. I'm not visual at all.
That is funny.
Doesn't make any sense to me, but oh well. It's funny though because I can read light in a photograph and understand how it was created based on the shadows and the contrast and all this different stuff. But it's interesting to me, like with books, I never really thought about characters existing in this way. I mean, do you ever have a character just suddenly come into your head like, hey, what if I did this? And do have this train of thought just randomly throughout the day and like, oh, I need something to write on.
Yeah.
Those kind of lightning strike moments.
Yeah. I remember it most strongly when I was writing the second book. I had a character who had a very, very strong personality. He's kind of a dictator-like character. And man, I wore the little recording thing out on my phone. Like I'd be driving back and forth, and I normally I listen to podcasts on my way to and from work. But I remember there was a period of time where I just didn't listen to anything because it was like these ideas just kept coming and coming and coming. And so I'd have my recorder ready on my phone, that app open, and just record little 5-10 second bits like for weeks, and then I'd go home and kind of jot down that idea or whatever. And I think that character was probably greatly influenced by just that process.
Interesting. So it's like this character, it's interesting to me because it seems like this character had a very strong personality in the book. And in your mind, their personality is coming through because they would pop in and demand your attention and demand you write this down. Just
like his personality, you know?
Yeah.
He wasn't the type who would ask politely, he just demands.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I never made that connection before. That's pretty fun.
So cool. I mean, because it was like literally alive in your head that way.
Mm-hmm.
That they would just jump into your life and like, hey, write this down now. Record this.
He's still one of, I think I'd say he's one of my favorite characters. It's just he was a blast to write. Somebody so diabolical,
Yeah, that's got to be really fun to let yourself go out into these personalities and write as these people that have to do things that you would normally never do. I mean, that's got to be an interesting feeling to be able to write in the mind or in the context of a person that there's some people in this in release day that they're evil, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are straight up evil. And then there's some incredible heroes that step forward. It's in fact, is one of my favorite ones. And I don't want to spoil it, but I just like, he stepped forward in my mind back in the pods to save the leader's wife. And it just, in one scenario, my hair standing up. Those moments in those tense scenes in the pods, you hold your breath. Physically, you're holding your breath when you're reading. I tell you, as a reader, I'm holding my breath reading these parts, or listening to these parts of what's happening, and like not knowing what's next. And it was kind of in a way too, it would freak me out because then suddenly we would jump to another person.
Yep.
You know, and I'm like, no, wait, what happened?
Yeah, I've had people like jokingly kind of fuss at me. They were like, you'll leave me on this cliffhanger, and then you'll change the perspective to somebody else, you know, completely far away, and it drives them nuts. And they want to skip that chapter and go see what happens next.
I wouldn't let myself do it. I wanted to do the same thing. I'm like, no. Just wait.
The only time I think you could do that is, so in the fourth book, several people asked me about writing a prequel because they wanted to know what happens, you know,
Sure.
in the period between when the insects land and when kind of the pods close their doors. I didn't really feel like there was enough content for a whole prequel.
Oh, God.
So in the fourth book,
There he is.
there's
so much. I can feel it.
Looking back on it, I definitely
Yeah.
could. But in the fourth book, there is a prequel perspective. So it kind of oscillates back and forth between the
Right.
prequel and, you know, where they are currently in the series. That theoretically you could read on its own. But that kind of takes the fun out of it because to me, it's better if you read it in order
Yeah.
naturally because the plot lines do kind of coincide a little bit more than
Sure.
you might expect.
No, Countdown to Release Day already exists in my brain. That's the name of the prequel, by the way. You can have that.
No, you should. Every single book has had a working title that my wife is like, that's stupid. You need to make it something cooler than that.
My whole brain, when you actually discuss, because there are some parts in Release Day where they talk about what they only know from history, because none of these people experienced Earth.
Right.
None of them have ever known Earth before the pod, so they only know like us what we would read in a history book.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one point where that's discussed, and my brain just went crazy thinking about. As a matter of fact, I had to stop reading the book for a minute because I was so just stuck thinking about how all this transpired and how all this happened. And I may be wrong in this. I don't know. It felt like to me that it sort of originated in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the reasons why we felt, oh, everything in Australia wants to kill you anyway.
Yeah. That's funny. That's another thing I never thought about is, you always think of Australia as, you know, they've got all the crazy spiders and the crazy snakes.
So you're like, who cares? There's another insect in Australia that wants to murder us. Yeah. No big deal. And that, to me, that's what played into our security as a global population. Mm-hmm. To go, well, they'll deal with it or they won't. And if they don't, it's trapped on their island.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we learn that's not true, it's way too late.
Exactly.
It's way too late. And Australia has exploded and taken up. Everywhere is Australia now.
It's kind of a metaphor, you know.
Yeah.
We have this problem. It's very clearly a problem. We are aware of the problem. We might even be aware of solutions to the problem, but we're like, it seems so distant from us. We don't have to fix that now.
Yeah.
And then by the time we're actually like, oh crap, we do need to fix this, it's too late.
Well, I think that speaks to us as a culture because I'm always joking around about how America is really bad at fixing root problems.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, we invented Band-Aids and duct tape. Like we're not good at fixing like the root problems of things. We're really good at slapping some flex tape on it and moving on.
Mm-hmm.
And this made me think of this so much because I was like, wow, this was really a root problem that dropped on our doorstep. And we were just like, meh, you know.
The one, it's funny, the one danger of writing, because it's near future, it's 2042.
Yeah.
The one downside about writing near future is, 2042 is not that far away. So in 2042, anytime you read my books after that, people are going to be like, well, that didn't happen. So
yeah,
but
you know what? But we'll be sitting here going, welcome to today's podcast. It's 2042. Mr. Matthews. It didn't happen.
Well, like it was really important to me to write a book that was obviously there aren't, giant insects trying to kill us. But it was important to me to write a book that was in other respects, like scientifically and I guess
well,
realistically accurate.
Yeah, think about it though. Isn't it true that there's so many different species of spider on the planet that if they did just decide to eat people, they would wipe us out in 30 days. I mean, it was something I read somewhere about spiders because there was just such a mass population of different species of spiders and different.
I've heard it about ants,
something like that. Yeah.
Apparently, there are significantly more like ants. I guess there's significantly more ant mass than there is human mass.
Right.
Which is kind of disturbing.
Yeah, and they're already underground. They're just like, and we can't see them, so we just think they're not there. So maybe we should kill more ants. I don't know.
Well, I think there's also the whole concern about if we eliminate something from our like ecosystem, what problems will that create down the line? And that's always a concern of mine. Like, with species die off is, we may not think it's a problem now, but in the future.
Yeah, no, that's another thing that we're not good at as a culture. I don't think is being visionary enough to see down the road the impacts of what if there are no more sharks, or what if there is no more of this tuna, for example. They've restricted that fish so much because we've overfished it so insanely. But we're not what's supposed to be eating that. You think about it. So what is the impact? What when you take a keystone species out of an ecosystem, and then just talking about ants, circling back to those, and I was thinking about the other day the zombie ant phenomenon that happens with the fungus in the rainforest. There's so many things we still don't know about on this planet. And it's amazing to me that we've actually had more people explore the moon than have explored the deepest depths of the oceans on Earth. That's blows my mind. Of course, we saw recently and tragically how dangerous it is to explore the depths of the ocean. Of course, it's just dangerous in space, but still, the crushing depths of the ocean are unforgiving.
Yeah.
which makes me think now, I can't help this. What is Mr. Matthews going to grow down there? Because these insects have seemingly taken over every, spot on Earth, whether it's water or land or air.
Well,
I can't remember. See, I'm only in book one, so I'm like, I haven't heard talk about the ocean.
Yeah,
I don't know what's in the ocean.
Without going into too many spoilers or too much detail, just remember that. So the nickname of this invading alien species is the arthropods,
right? And
just remember that the arthropod family. I always forget if it's a family or a genus. It's rather large.
Yeah.
Or maybe it might even be
I just sat here and thought about crabs and lobsters and all these things that are hard shelled things. Yeah. Okay.
And I'll just leave it at that. Never mind.
Yep.
But just remember it's a big category.
Wow. Yep. Okay. I kind of answered my own question when I said it out loud. I thought in my head, I'm like, oh no. Wow. Okay. That's fascinating to me because I like how, to me, the ocean kind of freaks me out anyway because you can't see what's in it. So your brain, I don't like being in any water. I can't see what's in it. And because your mind's always going to wander to the point that it's just the most terrifying thing that's in the water with you. At least mine does. So when you have these characters now that are in this world, they've left, they've been through their release day. Well, and going back to that, I had a question myself. Is there, I guess without giving away too much of the book, what is the purpose behind the release day itself? That to me feels very strange.
Well, remember how I said resources are limited?
Right.
So I don't think this is
I
too
think
much
they're
of a
being
spoiler.
made
It
to
comes
feel
out
like they're being released to go take over,
right.
get our planet back. Yay, yay, go humans.
Really, it's more of a
But
form of population control.
That's what I was like. Once they get out there, you're like, hey.
Yeah, and you got to think
I think you just got voted off the island.
Yeah. But you got to think too, who would be benefiting from that method of population control? And that I won't dive too much deeper into, but just, somebody's benefiting. And it's obviously not the people who are being released.
Yeah, no. It seems like, they're excited. It's our release day. We're going to go. And it seems like the word release day has a very, I don't know what you say. It's very contradictory because it sounds like you're being set free, which sounds like a good thing. But what you're being set free to is almost certain death. So, yeah.
Well, it's drilled into them from a very young age. You're probably going to die, but you're doing your part to help restore Earth.
Right.
And I mean, that's kind of the whole premise of the book is this group of teens is like, hey, we want to actually restore Earth, not just kind of make an effort towards it.
Right.
Because I guess release day is, when you think about it, has become almost more symbolic than it is, I guess, functional or effective.
Yeah, right. Right. No, it's I guess effective for the wrong reason.
Yes.
Not effective for the reason that they're drilled into their brains to believe. So, yeah. It's very interesting because it makes you start to talk and think about, and this is another reason I love it and why I love fiction, is because when fiction makes you start to talk and think and ask questions about reality and what we live in and how our society is going and how things are right now more just insane than ever. I tend to avoid discussion of politics and all that kind of stuff because politics, in my mind, has never solved anything, but it's great at causing problems.
Yeah. That's one thing I love about not only fiction, but about science fiction is it's really kind of like a political discourse.
Sure.
It's
science fiction only stays fiction so long, it seems like, and then we figure out a way.
And like, I really like writing this dystopian, post-apocalyptic, kind of genre. And it's almost a warning. Everybody who writes in this category, it's almost like a warning of, obviously, again, we're not worried about alien insects, but there are a number of other kind of falling in the dystopian category of things we should actually be concerned about.
Right.
That are, very real possibilities.
Yeah, it's a great way to have that conversation because I think that's one of the things we're missing right now. I think people are so emotional because they're so attached to whatever ideology or belief or whatever they hold in their reality that everything's become so polarized. We can't have conversation. If we can't have conversations and just agree to disagree, how do we learn? We don't. I mean, that's easy. We don't learn. And so I think that's one of the things that's missing is conversation. Another thing I think is missing is nuance. Looking at the characters in the pods, there's no black and white, good and evil. These people have been through such an insane ordeal. And some of them you think are truly good and want the best for everyone. And some of them just absolutely do not care, it seems. And at the same time, they're all trying to balance this insane reality to meet the demands of who they're involved with. And so when you sit back in today and look at today's society and everything, and you're just, my question I'm always asking myself is, why is it as humans we can't come up with a better system than what we have? Yeah. Have we just given up on trying?
To me, it's a status quo thing. The people who've got a decent life, they want to maintain that decent life. And the people who don't obviously want a better life. But for the people who don't, to have that better life, some of the people having the status quo, they would have to kind of make some sacrifices. And they're just not willing to do that.
Sure.
And I think that's why we find ourselves in the situation we are today. And also think the detachment from people. Because if you think about it, I mean, so much of our interaction is not face to face anymore.
Right.
And that's why, like, so I do have social media. I am somewhat active on social media, but to me, that is not my life like it is many authors, especially independent authors. And I just feel like the face-to-face interaction is so much more important.
Well, I mean, that's why I love doing this. And for those of y'all listening, don't realize we're actually sitting in a room together. We can look at each other. We're in the same room talking on microphones. This isn't done like by Zoom or over the internet. We're actually in a room together. And that, to me, I completely agree. Our phones, and I realize how people understand or seem to understand we're living in a society now that's more connected than ever, but those connections, those electronic connections, are false.
Right.
The only true connection is this, sitting across from each other where you can read each other's body language and emotions, and you know exactly, too, if you say something. And I always go back to kids playing video games, man. I've been cussed out by so many 12-year-olds. Fortnite is insane. Yes, I have played Fortnite. I played during COVID, and I couldn't build for anything, so I just would try to go kill everybody. And so, I mean, these kids will say anything because there's no repercussion.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, so they don't have to have empathy. And no acknowledgement because they can't see the person, how if they could say something and actually affect someone.
Yeah.
Because they don't know who they're talking to. But, you know, when you're sitting across from someone, that's a whole different ball game.
Mm-hmm. I had a situation happen to me not too long ago in a parking lot. So this guy came in, cut me off. Like, it was very obviously my turn to go, and he just cut me off blatantly. Like, I mean, it was pretty clear he knew what he was doing. Anyway, we go to walk in the store, and I realize that I'm walking right behind the guy who just cut me off. And he has not made the connection. He doesn't know that I'm the guy he cut off. And then he holds the door open for me, and he's like, "After you." And I realized that the personality that I just saw from, vehicle to vehicle was, kind of a butthole. And then here he is being polite and opening the door for me. And I'm just like, this is the difference between that distant connection and that personal connection.
Yeah, because when you sit down in a car, there's this false sense of security. The people I think get road rage need to be forced to drive mopeds. We'll see how rageful they get then.
That'd be hilarious.
I think we have a cure for road rage, But I mean, that sense of disconnection and that sense of protection from being in that vehicle and not seeing you as another human, you're that other car.
Mm-hmm.
But then suddenly when you guys are in the same place, in the same environment together, and then suddenly you realize, well, now this guy and he has no clue, which I think is really interesting, that you were like, made the connection and saw that juxtaposition of the person inside the car versus the person outside the car. Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if I'd sat down and talked to the guy, he would have been plenty nice. And, just...
He just had to get to Walmart first.
Well, and
he just had to get that parking spot.
And I don't know. Maybe I've done the exact same thing. Maybe I've cut somebody off and then held the door for them.
Sure.
So I'm not immune either.
No, none of us are. I mean, we're all, sitting down in the vehicle, driver you is very different from in the grocery aisle you.
Mm-hmm. You should see me in a grocery aisle. Like for the people who can't see, obviously this isn't a visual podcast, but I'm pretty tall. So I can't tell you how many times in the grocery aisle, a little, like a shorter woman will come up to me and be like, would you mind? And I grab something off the top shelf.
Has anybody walked up to somebody short and go, "Hey, can you reach down there at the bottom and get that for me?" Like, I'm going to start doing that now.
No, it's gotten to the point where like it's just kind of comical to me now, but I think it's funny. So that's funny. Really care.
Oh man,
happy to help where I can. At least I'm useful in some way.
I mean, I feel the same. I'm not quite. I'm tall enough to where I can hop and grab that thing off the top shelf. I'm not as tall as you. I can't just reach and grab it.
Like, now I'm usually, how it always says at the top shelf, please ask for assistance or whatnot. Right. I'm like, whatever.
I am assistance.
Yeah.
All right. Well, man, thanks so much for coming out today and talking about this. So,
Absolutely.
I'm going to link all your information down in the show notes so everybody can find the books and get reading them. And what's your next event you got coming up?
So I'm doing Free 99 in Millington, and that's June 22nd, I believe.
Okay.
Trying to think, July on the I think it's the 28th and 29th, maybe. I'm doing Nerds Assemble in Jonesboro.
Oh, I'll be there too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'll be there
Those
too.
are the next 2 months.
Yeah.
And then if you want more information, my website has all the events that I'll be
Awesome.
at. And that's just ryanmatthewsauthor.com. So
Yeah, I will be in Jonesboro in July, and then Greenville, South Carolina in July, and then back at Paragould in July. So
it's a little back and forth.
yeah, I will be all over the place in July. I feel like that meme of Charlie from Sunny in Philadelphia, where he's got the wall of photos with all the red string on the wall, trying to explain to people the next 2 months where I'm going to be.
No, I've definitely had days where it's like, where am I?
Yeah, no, I did. I every day I have to pull up my calendar and be like, Siri, where am I?
Yeah,
You know?
there was 1 month I did.
Oh, she's about to answer me. Stop.
Well, there was 1 month I did three events, like 3 weekends back to back, and they were each multi-day events. And you were there. I think
Yeah.
2 of them. And I just remember my wife. I came home after the 3rd event. My wife was like, "Please don't ever stack 3 events like that."
Oh, that had to have been March. I had 4 in a row
Yep,
in March.
it was March.
That were multiple day. And my wife was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, March is crazy.
We came up with a kind of, as much as I can adhere to it, every other weekend at least, not playing anything. And so that seems to be serving us pretty well.
That's good to give. You know, I'm sure my neighbors have been so thankful I've had this week to be in my yard. It no longer looks like Jumanji.
Yeah, I had to raise the mow height on my mower because it was getting a little tall.
I put 3 new blades on mine, and wow, it made such a big difference. All right, well, I appreciate you coming out and joining me today, man. And
Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to the rest of the books. And everybody out there in podcast land, we appreciate you guys for listening and hope you'll catch us on the next one.